First of all, the non-competitive transcendence of God. The most fundamental Christian claim is that Jesus of Nazareth is also God. Jesus of Nazareth is divine. The Council of Chalcedon caught this paradox when it said, in Jesus, two natures, divine and human, come together without mixing, mingling, or confusion in the unity of one person. That's the ancient claim. In Jesus' person come together two natures, divine and human, without mixing, mingling, or confusion. And you say, well, that's a lot of old-fashioned, Greek theological language. It has an extraordinary implication. Let me explain why. In saying this, the Council of Chalcedon held off three options. One option, very lively in the ancient church, monophysitism, that Jesus is God and his humanity is sort of an afterthought. Monophysis, one nature, he's divine. Chalcedon said no to that. On the other extreme, Nestorianism, very popular today, by the way, that Jesus is like a super saint. He's a human person with a very intense relationship to God. Chalcedon said no to that. There was also a middle position, very popular at the time, the Arian position, that Jesus is a little bit divine and a little bit human. He's a mixture of the two, like a demigod. Think here of the ancient Greek and Roman myths. Think of a Hercules or Achilles, semi-divine, semi-human. Watch how Chalcedon says no to monophysitism, no to Nestorianism, and no to Arianism. What does it claim? Weirdly, strangely, intriguingly, Jesus is fully human and fully divine. The two natures coming together without mixing, mingling, or confusion. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that God is very strange. It tells us the God we're talking about is not a finite or limited nature. That God is not one being among many, even the highest being. How come? Because the beings of the world always relate to each other in a competitive or mutually exclusive way. You can't come up here and take my place without supplanting me. I could turn this podium into ash by burning it. The antelope could become a lion, but only by being devoured, right? There's a competitiveness among finite natures, a mutual exclusivity. But then again, listen to Chalcedon. In Jesus, divinity and humanity come together, but without competition, without mixing, mingling, confusion, without one supplanting the other. What does that entail? It has to entail that God is not one of the finite natures in the world. Not one being among many, not even the supreme being. Why? Because the supreme being would be in competition with another finite being. Which is why our great tradition speaks of God not as ens summum, highest being. What's the highest being? I don't know, Jupiter or something, or a seraph. I don't know, the highest being, the biggest thing around. That's what God isn't. Rather, following Thomas Aquinas, our tradition speaks of God as ipsum esse subsistens, the subsistent act of to be itself. Not a being, but being itself. Think here of St. Anselm. We know Anselm from the ontological argument, if we know of him today. Anselm says, God is that than which nothing greater can be thought, right? And you say, well, sure, he means the supreme being. There's us and things higher than us and up, and then the highest thing, that must be God. But think about it for a second. God is that than which nothing greater can be thought. If God were simply a supreme being, then God plus the rest of beings would be greater than God alone, right? If God were like Zeus or Jupiter, some high being, then Jupiter plus the world is greater than Jupiter alone. But that can't be true. God is that than which nothing greater can be thought. God is strangely other, uniquely other. Catherine Tanner, the contemporary theologian, says that God is otherly other, meaning his transcendence is a strange transcendence. In my language, God is non-competitively transcendent to the world. His very otherness making possible the most intimate connection. Now here I'll quote St. Augustine. Augustine said, the true God is intimior intimo meo et superior sumo meo. God is closer to me than I am to myself and higher than anything I can imagine. Is God in this room? Well, no, of course not. This room is made up of beings exclusively. All of us, the wall, the ceiling. This room is full of beings. God's not in this room. God is totaliter aliter, we say, right? Totally other. But is God in this room? Yes, because ipsum esse, the sheer act of being itself, is the ground of everything in this room. Intimimor intimor meo et superior sumo meo. That's the strangeness of God, the non-competitive transcendence of God. Look how the Bible catches this. The prophet Isaiah, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so high are my thoughts above your thoughts, and my ways above your ways. And a few verses earlier, could a mother forget her baby? Even if she forgets, I will never forget my own. I have carved you in the palm of my hand. What reality can be simultaneously superior sumo meo et intimior intimo meo, but the God who is ipsum esse, non-competitively transcendent to the world? Here's an image now that catches this, I think. Moses on Mount Sinai. He sees a bush that's on fire but not consumed. And from that bush comes eventually the name of God. If people ask me, what's your name, what will I tell them? And God responds, I am who I am. One way to read that is, stop asking me stupid questions. You know, I mean, which one are you? Which being are you? See? I am who I am. I'm not this or that. I'm not here or there, up or down. I am is my name. But now what's the image, see, that catches this philosophical idea? The burning bush. The bush that has become luminous and radiant and beautiful and is not consumed. When the true God comes close, we are enhanced and rendered luminous, and we are not consumed. Contrast that, by the way, to the ancient myths. In the Greek and Roman myths, when the gods break into human affairs, what happens? People are incinerated. Things have to give way as this bullying, competitive divinity crashes in. Then look at this biblical image. The closer the true God gets, the more radiant and luminous the world becomes. Do you see how the incarnation is simply the fullest expression of this dynamic? There's the way the true God exists. I'm going to come back to it a little bit because so much of the atheism, old and new, is predicated upon the assumption that God is a threat to human flourishing. Can I argue, please, everybody, emphatically, that's utterly unbiblical. They got that idea from a very poor presentation of the Christian faith. Because the true God of the Bible is the one who is precisely non-competitive with human flourishing. Okay.